Hey, welcome back to another edition of Tip Tuesday. Once again, it is I, NeoQor, here in the studio, and today I'm going to show you how to make a reverse bass kick from scratch. Now, a lot of people have trouble with making reverse bass. It's not, always the easiest thing to make. A lot of people say, "Oh, well, you can just reverse a hardstyle kick tail, and there you go. There's your reverse bass." And you can definitely do that. That is a way to do it. It's very easy. Of course, you know that's not how I'm gonna do it. I want to show you how to actually synthesize your very own reverse bass kick sample from scratch. So let's get into it. Let's dive in. So the first thing I'm gonna do is, well, you can make a kick sound, right? You can make a kick punch, but the punch of the reverse bass kick is not really, to me, it's not really the most important thing. It's it can really be, honestly, the punch can really be any kind of punch. But I'll go ahead and make a kick sample just for fun, for the punch, just so we can say we made it entirely from scratch. So right now what I'm doing is I'm pulling up an EKS9. This is a kick drum synthesizer. So we're going to make our kick punch first. So right now it's really high pitched. That's not what we want. We want it to be a actual kick drum. So we're going to turn the coarse pitch all the way down. See how that sounds. That's not too bad. We still want it to be lower than that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send it to the piano roll, and I'm going to shoot this down an octave. So let's see how it sounds now. I like that right there. And that would be, I don't know if it's giving me the right note here. I don't know if the note on the piano roll is the same as what the actual note of the kick is. I can't detect pitch just by ear. I don't have perfect pitch like that. So we're going to use G-tune. I just want to see what key the thing is in. So it's actually in C. Okay, so we're going to make our tail in C. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this, just so I know for future reference, I'm going to call this punch C. So now our EKS9 is named punch C. So for the punch for a reverse bass kick, we don't really need it to be super long. We don't need to have a long tail, because right now this is just going to be the punch. So I'm going to turn mush mouth here. I'm going to turn the decay down just a little bit, and we're going to make it short and punchy. So what I just did is I turned the attack decay down. I turned the distortion a little bit up, so it's got a little bit of drive behind it. Let's keep working. So basically what I'm just messing with in here is the attack decay, attack just sustained, and then P decay and P start, which I think is just the tail. Or no, punch decay and punch start. I'm pretty sure that's what that stands for. So they just control different aspects of the kick, like the length of the punch, the length of the like the attack, sustain, release, all that stuff. Basically just controls the length of the kick. You can play around with those settings just to kind of get the kick that we need. But right now we're in a good place. We've got a nice little punchy kick here. Oh. probably shorten it a little bit. So now I'm going on to the attack. There's a little bit of a noise. You can kind of adjust the color of the noise in the initial snap of the kick, just to give it a little bit more of a high-end snap in the beginning. Right, so there we go. There's our basic kick right there. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send this to a mixer channel here, and to shorten it just a little bit, I'm going to record it out to Edison. We're going to play this here. Oh my god, I have too many windows open, so let me just get rid of all that. And let me pull up Edison. And we play this. There we go. We've got our kick as a waveform. We're going to hit Alt, Delete. Wait, no. Hold on. I believe it's Shift, Alt, Delete. Let me see. No, okay. So it's Control, that's what it is. It's Control, Delete. There we go. Had to click on the window to get it to work. Okay, so I'm going to delete the initial empty space there, and then find out where it flattens out. We can delete all this extra stuff here. Here we go. And we're going to page down to zoom out. And now we can save this. And I'm going to save it in my packs. So we'll go to Data, Patches, Packs. We're going to go to NeoQor, Sounds, Kicks. I'm going to go to, I'm just going to call this Punch. And I'm going to give it today's date, which is December 4th. Okay, so now we have our punch for our reverse bass kick, right? So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually add a 3 OSC. We're going to make the basic just bass for the reverse bass, right? So we're going to go to piano roll, and we're going to make a note that's a beat long in C. Now before I get too crazy and too hardcore like into this, I'm going to set this to 150. I'm also going to bring the let me see here. I gotta find this sample for the reverse bass kick. You know what? There it is, punch. So I'm going to take the punch out of the EKS9 synthesizer, and I'm going to put it in this sampler here, because what I want to do is I'm going to shorten this a little bit. Bring it up to C. Right now it's in F. Okay, so we've got our reverse bass kick punch here as a sample, and then we're going to add our 3OSC to it. So right now that's just going to sound like this. 3OSC is just a basic sine wave. We're going to want to pitch that down. So we're going to select it, and we're going to pitch it down, let's pitch it down 1 octave to C4. And then we're going to take the course of the middle oscillator, turn it up to +0 semitones. We're going to take the top oscillator and we're going to turn it down to -12. I want volume control on the highest oscillator, and I want volume control on the lowest one. The middle one can just stay where it's at. So we're going to make the top oscillator the middle frequency, right? So now it sounds more like that, right? So we want to turn this middle one down, because remember, this one is now the top frequency. We're going to turn the volume on that one down. We're going to turn the volume on the very low bass oscillator up. And now for the fun part, we're going to control the envelope of the oscillator here, of the 3OSC. We're going to set a little bit of a delay. We're going to turn the attack up. So now you hear it sounds more like it's kind of fading in and out from the envelope controls, right? Let's take a limiter to the master here. I want to make sure that there's not any like peaks from the two sounds overlapping. And there are. So I'm going to adjust the delay of the oscillator here. Okay, so it looks like that peak is actually coming from the punch itself, so we don't really have to worry about that too much right now. I can just adjust the the punch with like a limiter or a compressor or something like that to kind of reduce that peak a little bit. Okay. So now we're going to take the 3OSC, we're going to send it, well, first we're going to name this kick sub, right? And we're going to send this to another mixer track. I'm going to put Camel Crusher on it. I'm going to use Bass Maker. That's already starting to sound like something. go. We're starting to get a little bit of that reverse bass sound already. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put a parametric EQ on this. We're going to cut out a little bit of the highs, because this is just going to be the bass layer. My laptop's about to die. I better plug it in. So now we have gotten the highs kind of scooped down on this, so now it sounds like this. So now we have our bass layer, like our sub layer. And what we want to do is, let's go ahead and put a limiter on this, and we're going to compress the sub layer with the punch. That really does is just kind of helps the punch come through, helps more of the punch come through over that sub layer. You know, obviously the punch in a kick is your most important part, because that's what drives it. That's what really hits. So we want that punch to come through. So now we have a punch, we have sub layer. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to copy this 3OSC here. We're going to clone it, and I'm going to call this one kick crunch 1. And now notice I'm just going to clone the same exact note to kick crunch 1, right? And we're going to have some fun with this. Now kick crunch 1 has the exact same envelope as kick sub. We're just making a new layer. So we're going to change these guys to saw waves. So what I want to do now is I'm going to turn the coarse up on these guys. Okay, so these are still way too low. Okay, yeah, it's because this was an F. Okay. Okay, there we go. Sometimes in FL, if you create a new layer and you clone it from another layer that's already sent to a specific mixer channel, it'll send that new instrument to the same mixer channel as your old one. So you gotta watch out for that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and pitch this back down an octave to C3. There we go. We're just going to have fun with this. So what I'm doing now is I'm just adjusting the tension on this one, so that it kind of has a little bit more of a fading in sort of sound to it, making that curve a little bit steeper. Just adjusting the fine pitch a little bit, give it a little bit of a little bit of a detuned sound. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that right there. It's getting kind of a vocal, kind of a formant sound to it, and we can do more to that outside of this plugin here. So I just turned up the stereo detune a little bit on these oscillators just to give it a bit more of a stereo width. So now let's go on over to the high pass, or the different kinds of filters. We're just going to mess around with some filters. Nah, bandpass is not really working, so let's try some of these. I think that punch could use a little bit more of a, I don't know, just a little bit more of some oomph to it. So I'm going to put some very slight, fast distortion on it. I'm not going to go too crazy with it. I'm just going to turn the threshold down, turn the preamp up just a bit, just so it chops a little bit at the top there. I'm just going to season the taste. And now, so for the kick crunch, I'm going to take some of this low end out, since we already got a low end layer here. And, oh, you know what? There's one thing we can do just to give it a bit more of a vocal sound to it, and that's on the kick crunch. Excuse me. On the kick crunch, we can automate the cutoff, right? So we can turn the amount down here, and we can, that way when this goes up, the low pass, like basically the cutoff threshold, the low pass filter will go down, so it'll give it kind of a vocal sound to it. also go the opposite way with it, where we can turn this up, and the threshold will go up as this goes up, right? So well, it doesn't seem to be doing it, but oh well. We'll do it down this time, and we won't turn it down just like all the way. We'll just turn it down just a little bit. That way it'll get a little bit of that movement in the cutoff. We also want to make sure that the punch is compressing the kick crunch as well, so we're going to go ahead and do that. Excuse me. So we sidechain the punch to the kick crunch. Make sure we've selected punch here on the limiter, that's on the crunch. Okay, and now we've got the punch just slightly compressing the kick crunch, right? So now, for the fun part, we're going to mess around with some blood overdrive here. Turn the times 100 on, and then we're going to boost the preamp ever so slightly, because this is going to get loud. Actually, let me go ahead and turn this down a little bit before I do this, because it may get pretty loud. So, let's try it. And for those of you who've seen my past videos, you may remember in the video of the power of blood overdrive, I adjust the pre-band to kind of affect the character of the sound. So we're going to play with the pre-band. Right, so now we have a pretty sufficiently girthy reverse bass sound to start with, right? So this is all just synthesized from scratch, and it didn't really even take that long to make. So let me think. There's maybe a few other things we can do to it. So let's go ahead. Let's try to make this kick crunch a little bit more fat and nasty, because this is a good start, but this is not what we want the final product to be. So let me go ahead and compress the punch here. So that's it's a little bit better, a little bit louder there. Definitely want some more high-end snap on that punch. So let's try putting some Camel Crusher on it and see what we can make happen. going to need to do is we're going to need to layer something over that punch to give it some more high end, because if we just store it anymore, it's just going to sound like an old school gabber kick, and that's not what we want. We just want this punch to be quick, hard, punchy, snappy, and, not overpower the tail too much. We don't want to give it this long. We don't want to give the punch a long tail, because we have a tail that we're working on here. So I'm going to leave that punch the way it is for now. We can come back to that. So our crunch, I'm going to go ahead and put some more distortion on it. And turn it down just a little bit. Right, so we're getting there. And then you can EQ it just to kind of get a kind of fine tune the character of that crunch there. Looks like our crunch is getting limited really hard too, so let's turn the gain on that down just a bit. Alright, so we'll make sure we cut out the lows here as well. Make sure we cut out the highs here as well on the sub. Let me adjust the tension on the crunch just a bit more so it's a little steeper. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and get the sub to match that. And the cool thing too is on this, so let's go ahead and put a camel crusher on the crunch here. Or actually, let's do camel fat. We'll do camel fat, and then we can fine tune the resonance of the crunch, so we can really affect the character of it. So we'll turn the LFOs off first. Go to bandpass fat. Let's try that first. So we'll go to that. We don't want to go too crazy with the distortion, because then it no longer becomes reverse bass. It just becomes just a straight block of sound, and it, you kind of, if you distort it too much, you risk losing that kind of fading in sound. Of course, you can always bounce this back out as a sample and then put it through a sampler again, and then reimpose the envelope on it to get that effect back, which we may end up doing. But I want to see what we can do with this first. It's really, really handy to have Camel Fat 3. I really encourage the use of this synth because this plugin. This is not a synth. Because you can do cool things with the distortion and the resonance. You can actually tune the distortion of your sounds, and it's really handy for making reverse bass and hardstyle kicks if you know how to use it properly. So the next thing we're going to do, if you're really lazy and you don't feel like bouncing out that crunch sound, another thing you can do is you can go to gross beat and let me see here. You can take a sidechain gate like this and you can adjust it to where it's less of a sidechain, and you know it's still kind of like a sidechain gate, but like you can adjust the actual timing of it and the like basically just like the way that it mutes your sound. So let's try this. And then the fun thing about this too is you can take this and save it as a preset, and I can put it, let's see, I'm going to save this preset as reverse bass gate. Alright, so then I can go over to my kick sub and I can put that same gate on my sub, so that way they'll be gating kind of at the same time. So now let's play it. But if I don't want it to be on my my bass that much, because right now it's kind of, I feel like it's kind of choking my bass a little bit. So I can turn this down a little bit. This is basically just like the mix level of the gate. It'll still affect it to a degree, but it won't be like 100%. So your bass will still be dipping a little bit when these peaks dip, but just not as much. So that way your bass will be a little bit more sustained than your crunch, but it'll still be dipping and going up and down at the same time, at the same rate. And then if I want to get really fancy with it, I can send this crunch to a delay, add a little bit of a delay to it, just to give it a little bit of atmosphere. And I've done this with bass lines in the past. Gotta make sure I turn that dry down. And then I'll call this delay send. And then we'll make a reverb send. We'll send it to another channel where I'll set the preset on Fruity Reverb 2 to, let's see, we'll go with Cathedral. It's a big one. I like big sounds. We'll turn the dry down. We'll call this channel Reverb Send. And then we'll send the crunch to it. And we're going to turn the mix level down. We're not going to send as much to the reverb send because we don't want it to be too echoey. And then the cool thing about this is you can make, you know, your reverse bass, and because this is all MIDI data. This is not, none of this is a sample. So whatever you pitch it to, it's not going to sound all whack and like, it's not going to sound like it's shortening or whatever. Like you can basically pitch it to whatever you want. So like let me show you. And then of course the punch, we're just going to keep it the same pitch because we don't need to change the pitch of the punch. We just want to change the pitch of the tail. So keep the punch the same, and then you can pitch the sub and the crunch. So for example, whoa, hold on. Like, let's say I wanted to pitch it down. Whoops. And we're going to move this one down to G as well, or G. Now they're both pitching down to G. So this one is kind of getting down in that nasty range where it's pitching down a little low, but so you do have to kind of be careful of that. But I'd say, I mean, you know, most notes you'd be pretty safe. You know, just obviously you don't want to pitch it too low because then it can start to sound a little bit gross. But you know, that's the case with any bass sound really. But yeah, I mean, there you go. That's a pretty basic reverse bass sound. You know, just made from scratch, like from synths. No samples needed. No, you know, none of that needed. You know, you just kind of create a few layers and, you know, layer it, do a little bit of effects on it, distortion, EQ, mix the sounds a little bit, maybe some delay and some reverb thrown in there, and voila. So yeah, if you found this tutorial helpful, if you found value in this tutorial, be sure to you know, tell your friends. Make sure that, you know, that make sure that they subscribe to the mailing list. I'm going to be sending out more tutorial videos like this every week. For those of you who've already subscribed, you already know how it is. And yeah, so this has been Reverse Bass. If you have any questions about what I just showed you, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And until next Tuesday, I will see you later for another Tip Tuesday tutorial video. Bye bye.